So I'd like to call the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting of July 5th to order. Roll call. Mr. Gademauer. Here. Carolyn. Here. Jim. Here. Lou. Here. Carl. Here. And I'm here, and I think John Rayner called me, so I know he's not going to be here. Who else are missing? That's it. Okay. Get a motion to approve the minutes from the June 6th meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gademauer, seconded by Carolyn. Any discussion regarding the minutes approval? No discussion. We'll go to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Move on to public comment. Jim, can you reach out to me if anybody signed up for public comment?
Blank.
Blank? Okay. Anybody want to be public comment? Nobody's. We'll go on to new business as we just keep moving this along. That's good.
Can we do member comment?
Pardon?
Member comment?
Member comment? Sure, go ahead.
I have one. I brought this up before the meeting started here. In our hearings that we're having on the solar farms and everything, I don't believe we're following the state procedures here. And I think we should have the ZBA put a freeze on any hearings from here on out, because the clock starts the minute they have that hearing. And until the zoning petitions meet all the qualifications of the state, I don't believe we should continue any hearings, and I think we should stop it right now until we have the answers from the state's attorney, and our own policy is in conflict with the state law. So I think we should freeze all, because once that hearing starts, and we got a bunch of them coming up, if you look at the ZBA schedule, we should stop it.
Okay. Any other members' comments?
Yeah, I've had several property owners who have property contiguous to proposed solar farm sites reach out to me, and I've referred them all to my state reps. Because my understanding is that at this time there's not much that we can do as the county, and while I understand their concerns, I can't help them at the county board at this time. So and I think that we should do that. We should flood the state reps with all the people that are upset about the solar farm issue at this point. I do know there's something moving through law and government that'll come to the board. I'm glad I don't know what that is. So, I mean, I haven't seen it. So anyway, I just wanted to advise, if any of you are getting those, forward them to Suzanne Ness and Steve Reich. Those are the two state reps in our district.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn?
Yeah, we did talk a little bit about it in law and government in terms of, there's a sheet here I could pass around that talks about of the 30 plus approved applications for solar, only 5 are really actually don't include leases, because we talked about how long are these things going out. So the vast majority of them are where the owner is leasing out the property for the purposes of the solar farm, and so that has an end date on it to address some of the concerns we've had talked about before. I think the idea coming from Chairwoman Althoff is that because part of the reason the law, our understanding, the reason for the law is that there have been at least 12 counties that have put in place policies to make it almost impossible to get solar farms up. And so part of it, and I wasn't even prepared to talk about this morning, but I'm not trying to defend the law as it's written. I think there's a lot of issues that we have faced as a county because of it. But I think her point being that because we are very good at allowing solar in our county, we're not the problem, and that we should be able to continue to do the things that we need to do. You know, maybe we're not talking about 150% bond guarantee, but it should be more than 100% to make sure that the money is there when they are decommissioned. So I do know that there are things that are coming out of there in terms of what you're talking about. I'm not sure how that balances with what they're trying to do. So.
Okay. Yes, Carolyn, exactly right. There's some things being worked on that just got to get pieces of the puzzle put together. So hopefully we can move forward.
For my member comment, I would just like to say has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, we are not following that law.
Right, and I'm saying, I was just trying
Before,
to...
making sure that these solar farms have all their permits and everything applied for, not applied for, but approved, and all their signatures done prior to even having a hearing, and we are not doing that. We're letting it slide through until they start to build the solar farm. Not good enough. If the state law says we have to pass this stuff, then we don't even start it until, we don't start any hearings until they have it done and completed. And I am, at this point, a no vote on any solar farms until we comply to that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move forward then to new business, which is the interviews for the Regional Planning Commission. And I see Linnea is here. Linnea, would you like to come up to the front, please, and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about why you would want to be on this position.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, good morning, everybody. So my name is Linnea Kooistra, and I am a farmer. I'm retiring this year, but I'm a farmer in Alden Township. And I've served on the Planning Commission before, several times, for updating land use plans. And I live in the rural community, which is a lot of the area that when land use changes happen in McHenry County, and it's in unincorporated areas. And so I have a great knowledge about farming, about soils, about things that are important to the rural community when land use comes about. And so I think I can be a good voice to represent that community on the Planning Commission. But I've also worked on a lot of different boards and commissions, and I know the importance of working together and balancing different needs, and I really am supportive of the goals of the land use plan. I worked on the last one. I was appointed as part of Charlie Eldridge and I were appointed from the Zoning Board of Appeals to be on the land use plan. So, I know how the process works. I've done it before, and I really support it. And when Mary McCann resigned off the Planning Commission, and she was kind of representing the rural area, I thought, well, it's time to step up. Somebody's got to do this, so I'm happy to serve.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming in and interviewing this morning and wanting to be on this position. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but we have 3 excellent candidates in one position. So.
I know you have 3 excellent.
So,
That's what I
which
heard.
puts us in a good position for that. Does any of the committee members have a question for Linnea? Go ahead, Jim.
You talked about you were representative from the ZBA appointed before. Are there any other ZBA members currently on it?
Charlie.
Charlie's the only one? Okay.
Anything else, Jim? Or?
No.
Okay. So go ahead, Carolyn.
Did you have?
Go ahead.
No, I was just, I guess, what do you see, and I'm not looking for an in-depth answer, but just kind of as we go forward with yet another plan, what do you see as one of the top priorities that we're facing? Sometimes a couple of them can be kind of intertwined over the next 25 years.
Well, I think it's important to everybody in McHenry County to preserve our groundwater and make sure that we have high-quality drinking water. And people love the open spaces of McHenry County, love being able to have the rural part of McHenry County. And so I think our land use practices that can do that, it works together. Where you have agriculture, you're going to have better groundwater quality. Tends to be, you have more recharge areas for aquifers, and so I think that's important. Agritourism is growing in this county, and that's a great way to bring in people and also educate them a little bit about agriculture. So I think that's important. I mean, Jim brought up the issue of solar farms, and how that is becoming, a bigger thing in McHenry County. But as we hear in the zoning board, all those that come before us are not going to necessarily be approved. They're going into a pool, but they're not all going to be approved. But that's one way that we can provide more tax revenue. while preserving prime farmland for the future and, have green energy, which is also something that our county has in our last land use plan. One of our big ideas was promoting green energy, so I'm supportive of that.
Yeah, sure.
So the other thing too is, one of the things that oftentimes, and yes, the resources are a top priority. One of the things that keeps coming up is the protection and preservation of agricultural land. And obviously every time we do a land use plan, we start with less acreage. So we talk about it and it's a priority, but it's not actually resulting in the actual preservation of farmland, right? So overall, I mean, we're losing it over time. So there are some tools. I don't know, I have no opinion about them one way or the other as to how effective they would be here. They're used in other places. So just briefly, things like, the creation of agricultural districts or, utilizing developmental rights or farmland trust options that would provide for, a farm owner to have access to that profit that would come from developing the property but keeping it in agriculture. So do you have any ideas about
Well,
those kinds of things?
there's more conservation easements now. If farmers want to protect their farm for future generations and make sure it's a farm, they can do something like that. My big thing is you can't protect farmland unless you're going to protect farming as an industry. And sometimes we're all about land and we forget about these farmers who need to make it a business. And if you have policies that then drive these farmers out of business, then the farmland is not going to do you any good. So I think it's connected. You have to support the industry as well as the preservation of the land.
Thank you. Joe, did you have something?
Well, you're replacing the seat that Mary McHenry was at. I don't think there are any other farmers on the board, correct? On the planning commission
Correct.
right now? Okay. So more important than the ZBA issue is the farming issue. In terms of if you had to balance which thing was more important to you, more important to have represented at the planning commission. You've got a ZBA member there. You don't
Correct.
have a farmer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that
Yeah,
that was
I mean, both. I think part of the last land use plan that we did, we developed these big ideas. It was because sometimes the land use plan is so broad. At the zoning board, we need teeth from the land use plan that we can use then and make, that we can defend our land use decisions when we come to zoning. And so part of updating that land use plan was trying to make sure we have statements in there that then the zoning board can actually look at and say, we can do this because it's actually supported, or we can't do this. So that's important too.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Linnea, the chair of the Regional Planning Commission, Mary Donner, asked me to remind all the applicants that the meetings are once a month, and whether you are the one chosen to fulfill this position or not, you're welcome to come to the meetings and to keep up to speed just in case there is another person that would
Sure.
resign or whatever. So, okay, thank you very much for coming in.
Okay, sure.
Excellent.
Okay, great. And I seen Mr. Ziller come in, I think. Dan, you want to step up and come forward, introduce yourself, please, and let us know a little bit about why you'd want to be on the Regional Planning Commission?
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to.
Please feel free to have a seat, make yourself comfortable.
Interview. I'm Dan Ziller from the Huntley area. I'm kind of scattered all over the county, actually. It's my home base. I'm currently the Farm Bureau president. We do have a 10-year policy, so I'll be leaving that position here in September. But I will say, just in all honesty, when this commission was formed, I was a little upset that Farm Bureau wasn't asked to come to the table. So now that there's an opportunity, I'd like to take it. So I'm open to questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Mr. Ziller? I'm just thinking on, I can see that.
No, Dan, you brought up your thing about the Farm Bureau being on there. What do you think the Farm Bureau could bring to the table on the 2050 plan? Your idea, if you were upset about that, what does it? What would you be able to bring to the table?
Just, want to make sure that agriculture gets a fair shake in this plan, and also, we've got a mass retirement coming in this industry here in a few years, and we need to keep our young people here in this county to carry on agriculture and bring in others. And we're getting so diverse in what agriculture does now. It's not your big farm. It's, we're down to 5 and 10 acre farms, growing vegetables and things like that. We need to make sure that all these people can continue to do that going forward.
Okay, have you been following any of the meetings, or I know you're up to speed on most of the stuff anyway, but
Just whatever conversations I have with Mary. But yeah, I have not attended any meetings.
does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Ziller? Jeremy, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up with the same question I guess. Linnea was, we are kind of losing farmland from year to year, over time. From if you look at the 2030 plan to now, and just trying to understand what are some options, what are some tools, and like you say, and I'm glad you brought that up. Agricultural community is more diverse today. You do have your smaller farmers, 5-10 acres, right, and they're focusing on vegetable production for local consumption. So, and I know you represent all farmers, so sometimes there are competing interests about what landowners want to do with their property. So, are there some tools that we can use? Other places use things, something like agricultural districts or farmland trust options, where if somebody wanted to leave because they wanted to get the development value out of that property, but you can try to find a way to keep it in agriculture for future generations. What do you, just briefly, I know it's a big issue and it's a big topic, but I mean.
I actually own some property up in the Harvard area that is part of an agricultural district.
Okay.
That says that will remain agriculture. I think there's areas in the county where you can continue with that to get those designations. Years ago, I was on another committee here where we were trying to figure out how to keep the development rates on agricultural land. Actually, the county somehow divide, like King County uses the riverboat money to buy easements, farmland easements, so that would stay a farm forever. That was quite a complicated thing for us because we didn't have a source of revenue like King County did. It's another thing that could be explored. There's a couple of options right there. There are other ways that you can set up that your farms would stay in agriculture through your own succession planning. And there's places where that will and could happen in the county. So there's a few options.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Dan, thank you very much for coming in, and you probably heard me say that the chair of the Regional Planning Commission would be happy if anyone wants to come to the meetings, even if they don't get recommended for this position, just to stay up to speed in case somebody else would resign from that.
I will say whatever happens there that we will start attending some to see what's happening.
Okay, that would be great, and as you know, it's one position, and we have 3 great candidates that we're interviewing this morning, so.
Okay, I thank you all for taking the time to hear.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're a little ahead of schedule. It's Verne Sisson here. Verne Sisson is not here.
He's down there.
If you would, thank you. Hey Verne, welcome.
Morning.
Yeah, thanks for coming in this morning.
Sure.
If you just want to introduce yourself and explain a little bit why you would be interested in this position for the Regional Planning Commission, that would be great.
I'm Verne Sisson. I live between Marengo and Garden Prairie, Illinois. I saw the position opening on the Farm Bureau website actually when I got the notice of it. And I both farm and then also through my job I deal with a lot of commercial ag customers. I work up in Harvard, so about as far west as you can get into the county. So I guess I kind of thought I feel like I kind of know as the western side of the county grows potentially what the needs of the businesses and the farming community may be. And thought possibly some of that input could be valuable to the board as they move forward with the plan.
Okay, great. Have you attended or have been familiar with the Planning Commission's meetings previous or?
I have not attended any. I've just, I've read about different things, different people that sit on it. Like I know Charlie Eldridge, he's kind of told me a little bit about bits and pieces of what's going on, but I have not attended any.
Okay, no problem. Does anyone else have any questions?
Go ahead.
Caroline?
I'd like to ask the same question of everybody, just so I can hear the answers. But obviously, we're trying to figure out where we want to go with the 2050 plan. So, what do you see as kind of maybe the top one or two issues that we are facing that really need our attention with this process going forward?
Well, it seems like right now the growth has kind of been concentrated east of 47, but with the new interchange down south of Marengo off of 23, I think in the long run that's going to increase the transportation and road needs in the western side of the county. We have a new employer up in Harvard, U.S. Medical Glove, that if they do everything they're talking about, I think is going to significantly change that part of the county. So I think transportation will be one thing. I think getting faster services through the internet is going to become a bigger and bigger issue to try to for the companies to come out our way. And I know there's some talk in our area about some folks looking at possibly the Linnea airport, and that seems to be a big thing too as companies continue to come on the western side. They'd love to have an airport at some point in the western side of the county to fly into. So I think transportation and communication are going to be two big things, and then blending that together with probably anticipated housing growth down there too. And then how do you balance everything out when that and rural community with farming needs and their needs for water and power too.
So one of the things we talk about, it's been kind of with us every single time we do one of these plans, is the preservation of agriculture. And so, the competing interests of land use, and how do we, obviously we're looking for that, this is a big part of our economy here in the county, but it's also an issue with food security, in the area and that sort of thing. So, there are different tools out there for that, agricultural districts, farmland trust agreements, or development rights agreements, and that sort of thing. You're both in banking and in farming, so I don't know if you have anything that comes to mind in terms of tools that are available for this purpose.
Well, as you said, I know like the conservation district is another one. As you said, there are different ways people can put farmland in preservation. I think the biggest thing in controlling how we continue to keep the true farmland in farming is controlled the development of where commercial goes and development where residential goes. You know, there's a lot of vacant lots still left around the county that can be developed yet that have been sitting there since the recession hit in '09. And I think, personally, I think people need to concentrate on filling up those areas first before they begin to go into agricultural areas that are potentially going to take up additional farmland. And I think there's got to be a way to kind of blend that together again as they move forward.
Go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to make sure, because it's happened before on us by mistake. You said you live west of Marengo. Your address is McHenry County, right?
Yeah, I actually have a Garden Prairie address, but I'm just into McHenry County. I'm just literally a quarter of a mile east of County Line Road.
All right, well, that's good. I wanted to make sure we clarified that point. And then over there in Marengo, some of the issues in the western part of the county. Tell me some of the, I know you stated some of the issues. Tell me some of the other issues, drainage issues, contamination issues. I know you've got some issues over there in northwestern Marengo, the plume and everything. Tell me what your thoughts are on handling, protecting the county from situations that are.
I think drainage districts are a good first start. I think a lot of the farmers in the area are becoming pretty good stewards of the land and trying to participate in the government programs, pulling the runoff through all the tiling that's been done into the water streams that we have. You know, I think again, the conservation district, you know, if you work in conjunction with them, you can set up wetlands that help preserve some of the runoff too and kind of protect what's going on. I do, depending on what the weather does, you know, water may become an issue down the road because a lot of irrigation has gone in on our side of the county for the farmland. So again, how do we kind of balance that out to purge, and that's going to be kind of an ongoing source of things that we're going to have to look at.
And with irrigation, that chemical plume that we have over there may be an issue
Could be.
on that.
Very well could be.
So, okay. All right, well, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have anything? Verne? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Verne, we have 3 excellent candidates for one position. So we are gonna have deliberation here in a little bit. And the chair of the Regional Planning Commission asked me to remind all the applicants that if they would want to come to the meetings, they're certainly welcome. Keep up to speed if you don't. That way, if somebody else resigns, you'll be right there ready to step in. Other than that, thank you very much for coming in this morning.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Verne.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the 3 candidates. We'll move on to 5.4, deliberation and selection to the Regional Planning Commission. 1 candidate recommend to the county board chair. As I just stated, 3 excellent candidates. Jim, you got?
We're going to talk about them first, right?
Yep.
And all 3 candidates, I tell you what, I don't think I've ever seen 3 more qualified candidates than this.
Yeah, I agree.
And we can't go wrong on any one of them.
I agree.
And that, and I like all 3. But I don't know Verne at all. I've never met Verne before. It's the first time I've ever seen him, and I actually couldn't pull out his resume on the pen line. So I couldn't read about him, so I didn't know what he did. I liked his answers. I liked his conversation, and I think he would bring a lot to that board because he's in a lot of areas out in that western part between Harvard and what the farmers do. That would be my recommendation. I actually like Verne on this. And I'm good friends with Dan Ziller, but I really like Verne. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm glad you speak up, give your opinion, that's all we need. Joe?
I don't disagree with anything that Jim said. I would bring out two other things though, and that is Linnea's situation is as a soon-to-be retired farmer, but also on the zoning board, she understands how the two things work together, and that's got a great value. At the same time, Dan has the Farm Bureau and that behind him, and we are replacing a farmer for farmer on this. And on the other hand, Verne is farming and banking, and I honestly, you could put them on a dartboard and throw a dart, and I think it would be great no matter which one we pick.
Yeah, we'd still come up a winner, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lou.
Ditto. However, Verne is outside the system, and sometimes people outside the system have different eyes. Like, he hasn't been at the regional planning meetings, and I sometimes think that's really a good thing, that they see things that those of us who are steeped in the process don't see. And I tell you, I was at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't know, the other two are so experienced. But sometimes inexperience is really a good thing, because you ask different questions and you see things differently. And I do like that he bridges the farming, banking, community, he has that piece. So his view is going to be a little different. So yeah, I like them all, but I liked Verne. I like the idea that he's not an insider. I just like that. And I liked his answers. I thought he responded well to the questions.
Carolyn, you guys want to put in?
Ooh, I agree, I think they're all good, so, I really do.
It's toughest.
It is tough, and Verne had actually applied last year, because you weren't on the committee, but he had applied last year for the conservation district, so this is part of the reason why a little bit more information going in. And was wondering if that banking experience would actually bring that other aspect to the table, which I really liked on paper. I do agree with Joe that, Linnea does bring that zoning, and really the land use framework and how we're going to map that out does require an understanding of zoning and how that looks and what we can and cannot do in zoning, which gets really, really complicated. And Dan represents the Farm Bureau, and I know that it was a challenge for him and the Farm Bureau when they were going through the whole Duke Energy thing, because you had farmers who were opposed and you had farmers who were in favor, and they're representing all farmers. So he comes with that perspective of having to represent everybody, and has been in those shoes for a long time. So that's not an answer.
No?
That's not an answer. Now I know it's.
I agree.
Right? So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It's just very difficult. It's just fantastic we have such great applicants.
So I don't know if there's opportunities, and I don't know, and I don't want to throw a wrench in, and so if this is like totally out of line, then I'll back off completely, but I know we do have ex officio people on the board where they can kind of chime in, but they're not a voting member. I don't know, you could, if you do that, maybe like with DBA and have Linnea be that ex officio, or, I mean, now that I'm sitting and thinking about it, you could do
Dan from the Farm Bureau, I think.
Ex officio, so, and then having Verne on. So I do think that last time we had our meeting, we had a full table, and it was like, oh my gosh, how many more people can you add? But generally, there's at least a couple people missing, and I think we had 3 consultants sitting at the table too, so it was very full. But so I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as well. So and just suggestions on that.
Is there any issue with doing that?
The ex officio, I don't know. I think anyone could
Three or
I think anyone
Great
could come to the
candidates.
meeting, and it would be up to the chairperson if they wanted to let them speak.
Well, I mean, there could be an official designation as ex officio. So we have Scott Henning, who handles the transportation. Melissa Adamson is on there. I'm on there. I speak way more than I should, but I'm ex officio.
I don't see why.
Well,
Who
I
else
think
is on there? I was looking at
I'm sure there's rules, and they have a set
Yeah.
number of people on that.
Amending bylaws to incorporate and have it named as official.
Oh, I see, okay.
Is that a big deal?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
You have to amend the
Have to amend.
establishing ordinance.
I don't know at this point in
Several
it.
steps.
Oh, it is
It's not really
several
what
steps.
we're gonna do here.
Oh.
Yeah, and
Well,
that-
is it already there in the bylaws if we already have ex officios?
No.
No?
The ex officios and the organizations that they represent are specific in the ordinance.
Okay.
And at this point in their process, I don't think we want to go start changing the bylaws right now. That would be my thoughts. So,
Well, it's unfortunate to lose the wealth of knowledge at the table. I mean, between the three of them,
yeah.
they bring history and, experience and new views to a very important part of the 2050 plan, which is the land use plan and preserving ag. There has to be some way to use that.
Well, and then it, kind of comes into question and not a criticism, how do we determine who's the ex officio? Right, how do we determine what positions that we have on that board? Going forward, I'm not saying necessarily for now.
It doesn't change what we have to do right
It doesn't
here.
change what we have to do right now.
Well, I'd like to ask a question then, further on this. What is the makeup of our commission on voting members? How many voting members are there? 11? Okay. And so this is one of 11, and and the Farm Bureau is not represented. Transportation is represented, the Farm Bureau is not.
The Farm Bureau is not, but that's not necessarily,
That's a good thing or a bad thing, I
it's
don't.
not a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
Okay.
Except that we're talking about preserving agriculture.
So,
Lou, I
True.
understand that, but.
No, I just,
But we have, it's a whole bunch of stuff, and this is one. I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
So after this discussion, I tend to change my mind a little bit, and I would like to nominate Dan Ziller to represent the Farm Bureau side of this.
And that's fine, Jim, but just a second, I didn't know if Carl had anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you didn't.
Bring to the table.
I was happy with Dan. Again, they have all good pieces that could, fit into the puzzle. We might need to put them up there and start putting hash marks by them.
Well, I think with 3 we'll be all right here. And Mary, welcome to the table, that's fine.
Thank you. I only want, Peter told me I needed to be here if I was going to flap my app, so.
Well, that's the way it is, it's a public meeting, you're on the recorder, and so yeah, if you have something you would like to contribute, feel free.
Only as chairman, because all 3 of them are very good. Again, we are covering more than just farms, but farms is a big deal. Water is a big deal because it affects everybody. Farmers, that's going to fluctuate, but as they said, we have to do things to protect their interests and what's going on. I think there are some people who have a wealth of information and are excited. I was very excited about the people that you took, the 3 people, young, scared to death. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? They are fantastic. They didn't come in, but it does bother me that people who don't know all the whole processes of things have not even watched one of our meetings. That's a problem for me, because then they would see what our makeup is and what we do. Who you pick will be perfectly okay, and everybody will be included. But this is a very robust group, and we want to be able to keep it robust. No, you can have like this. I'm sorry.
No, how far are you into this? How much is left?
We are where we should be, pretty much.
We are where we should be, and what we've accomplished is we're to the outline. The outline of the comp plan has been established. So now we're going into working on that future land use map, which is the biggest part of the comp plan. So I would say we are more than halfway through at this point.
And we're coming up with more ideas, and the nice part is that everybody on the commission is welcome or interested in and participating in other things, like the county fair that's coming up, to market what we've got, and so that people can come by and see things. We're in a better position at the county fair to do stuff, but that's not what we're here for today.
Right, okay. Carolyn has a question?
Well, actually, to build on that a little bit, so, I mean, I think a comment was made, so, in terms of like having somebody at the table, I do believe that, and I don't know how robust it was, but I do believe that the comment was made by Mr. Ziller at the end that the Farm Bureau wasn't contacted. And I was pretty sure that they were contacted and that they were asked to participate in different, like,
We did
visiting
have one
sessions.
meeting with all the farmers,
Right.
specifically with all the farmers in this room, so that they could talk about the issues that they had. The Farm Bureau was part of that.
Right, so I think that, I don't know where the misunderstanding would be there, but that was my understanding, so I wanted to make sure that that was out there. I do think that, and any time people can come and talk, so we don't, like throwing out the ex officio was not to put a wrench in everything, it was just a thought, because we have people on there. And people, Linnea came and she sat at our last meeting and provided some insights, even though she wasn't on the commission. She's not a voting member. Public is welcome to come and participate and comment anytime they want. And I think that that's been out there for a long time, that they can participate.
Right.
So, I just want to make that clear. So I think that opportunity has been there and it can continue to be there without, obviously, a bylaw change.
Okay, and Lou had something?
Yeah, knowing how far along we are in the plan, it's probably really important to have someone who understands, as Joe said, the zoning piece of it has that very strong muscle, but also tied to farming, and you want someone who would be ready to be on the ground and could go. And since she has been at your meetings and has been engaged, it sounds like at 50% of the way through,
It was a long road, but yes, we are.
yeah, that would, you would want someone who had some
Jim?
Hit the ground running.
Jim, go ahead.
Charlie's on your committee.
He is,
He's a voting member,
he is.
so there's your representation already on the zoning side. That's my opinion, in the ZBA. And Charlie's very outspoken and verbal in his ZBA.
That's Charlie.
But I mean, he's a great representation of that. And so I do think we have that base covered, and I think we need to cover that farming area a lot stronger, which is why you got all three of them. Now, Linnea is a farmer now. But to representing everyone, Dan's one answer is the 5-acre parcels, that go down to even smaller parcels. Before, you never looked at a 5-acre parcel to contribute toward agriculture in the past, to speak of, financially. But you see them all over now. They're going up all over the place. And it's actually, there's been a good revitalization of these farm buildings and old parcels that have just been deteriorating and falling apart. And that does have a place in my heart on that. And I would still favor one of the two gentlemen.
Okay, Joe, did you have something?
Well, I was going to ask what you wanted to hear.
Pardon?
I wanted to hear what you wanted.
Yeah.
The other one that hasn't spoken.
I thought I would respectfully stay out of it. It is, everyone that spoke to their particular person that they brought out good points of, I can't say anything different, really. I think Linnea, with her experience on the zoning board and farming, and as you mentioned, how that meshes to be there and the experience that she has and that she has come to. And I believe that she was on the planning commission before, if not the regionals.
For 2030.
Okay. So that experience is fantastic. Once again, Dan, as representing from the Farm Bureau, he doesn't speak for himself, he's speaking for the group of farmers, which is great. Verne, for answering questions off the cuff when he talks about transportation, communication, and balancing it with ag. And I did like that you mentioned there's so many lots that have already been zoned for building that, use them up before you start approving any other developments. So he had some great answers. So I'm a little bit just like Carolyn, I didn't really give you an answer, did I?
What do you say, Carolyn didn't give us an answer?
Well, so we can't go wrong here, and that's been said before. I'm going to open it up to the committee for nominations.
Well,
So,
I guess I would just add on one thing.
Okay.
Again, not, if we feel that there is representation of the ZBA already, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily, we do, but I also think that Linnea brings a lot to the table in terms of her zoning. But if you are looking at the other two candidates, I do kind of building on what you're saying, there were a lot of other issues that were brought into play with transportation and development and all the things that are going to come together that are going to coalesce, not being just one issue. It's how did that fit in with everything that we're doing? Because the reality is, the extent to which we want to preserve farmland, we still have a lot of development pressure going on, and we're going to have to deal with that at the same time, and we're going to continue to grow. So, a lot of issues involved.
Yep. Jim?
So, let's move this thing on.
Yep.
So, with that being said, going back to Dan Ziller, after your last conversation, I kind of saw your position, I think, is that I would nominate Verne. How do you say his last name? Sisson?
Sisson.
Sisson?
Sisson, yes.
I should put these cheaters on so I can
Okay,
see that.
so we have a nomination on the floor, seconded by Mr. Gottemauer. Is there any conversation regarding the recommendation of Verne Sisson for this position? Or did we hash it out enough, I think? Everybody's good with it? Okay, we'll go to vote. Jim?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl? Yep. And I will say yes too. So Mr. Sisson will go to the chairman as the recommendation for the Regional Planning Commission. Thank you for coming in, Mary. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your input
Yeah.
You're welcome.
and your answers.
Okay, we're gonna move on to 5.5.
I'm sorry?
We hope
And-
pages 7 will fit in with the rest of the group and get it done.
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Mary. McHenry County Stormwater Management Ordinance Variance. Where staff's gonna bring us up to date.
Gonna have to go over there.
So, please let me know and I know you said you were from Bow Valley when I was in earlier. Can you mind to introduce yourself, please?
I don't know. My name is Corey Van Dyke. I work for Baxter & Woodman, the engineering consultants for the Village of Bow Valley.
Okay.
We're looking at doing this project and constructing.
Okay. And,
Emily Durant, I'm village president for Bow Valley.
okay. Emily, thank you.
Corey?
Yes.
Say your last name again, please.
Van Dyke.
Van Dyke. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. There's a few steps that we need to follow here for this variance. It's variance 2301, Village of Bow Valley, with respect to Queen Anne Road. You see that up on the map there. Kind of the Queen Anne goes north and south, and then makes the little dog leg there. But we're specifically talking about Queen Anne Road to the south of the dog leg, and then north of Little Valley Road there. So see that little wet spot there, the really dark spot there on the west side of the road. That's kind of the vicinity of the project for your understanding of the location. There is a public hearing with respect to this variance. The county Stormwater Management Ordinance has prescribed that this specific variance does require the need for a public hearing because of the extent of the project. If it has the effect of affecting adjacent property owners. And in this case, it does. So we felt it would be necessary to hold a public hearing, and Emily and Corey will be here to kind of discuss that. So Kathy, you ready? So we'll open the public hearing.
Okay. It's my understanding that we can open the public hearing without adjourning the PED thing, so we'll open the public hearing regarding this variance at 9/21, July 5th. So, is there anything more you want to bring us up to speed with, Joanna, before we do anything else? And if you could comment on them as built, your recommendation for a condition, as built plans shall provide to verify the amount of compensatory storage, provided the amount of compensatory storage should be no less than the permitted proposed overall amount. That confuses me.
Sure. We'll go over that, but a couple of housekeeping things again. There was a public notice put in the newspaper, Northwest Herald. We did notice the adjacent landowners to the north of the dogleg, the mailing property, the farm to the east of Queen Anne, and then the Village of Bull Valley owns property to the west there. So there's specific requirements of the location relative foot-wise to the actual project. So that was noticed. The public hearing documentation was also placed downstairs, so it's all been noticed appropriately. With that, I will give some...
Okay, and I would ask, is there anyone here from the public regarding this stormwater variance ordinance? It does not look like that's the case.
Can I just a quick question? So village owns to where? To here? Or do they own all the way down? You're just saying this, is this the type?
All the way
All the way,
down to.
okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
So you'll see the dog park is to that south. The green lines are the parcel lines.
Yeah.
So the dog park is that green grassy area, and then there's the stand of trees in there, the oak trees in there.
Okay.
And then there's a farm field to the north there.
But this is a quarter mile mostly from the curve this way, so it's not all the way down to West Bull Valley Road, correct?
Well, it's about 15.
Well, when you get to Bull Valley Road, it's pretty high. I assume the area we're really talking about is the low spot.
The low spot,
Yeah.
where you can see the wetness. You
Yeah.
can see the water.
Okay.
The proposed reconstruction is about 215 feet adjacent to that low spot.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I was out there yesterday, and that's got to be the worst road in McHenry County.
I was going to try to drive that, but getting here, hopefully not for long.
Yeah.
Probably driven that road, I don't know, several thousand times, because that's usually the way I come to the courthouse.
Yeah, and there's no doubt when it melts and floods and then refreezes, it's a tricky one.
And it is the part of the road that floods when there's a heavy rain.
Yeah. So, okay, Emily, do you have anything you want to?
Just general comment, I'll leave all the technical information to Corey, but just generally, the road's been an issue for as long as I can remember. When I moved in here in 1992, it started this thing. I used to walk my horses down there to teach them to walk through water. It fell off, seriously.
Wish you would have told me that, I would have put it in.
I know, sorry.
Got some pictures.
Details I forget. But frequently, as a village, frequently we have closed that road and of course, it obstructs traffic. And then it creates a safety issue because people don't really pay much attention to the fact that the road is closed and they want to shoot through there. Just last year, we had someone go off and into the field and into the water that had to be hauled out. So it's just an ongoing problem, and we have, of course, recently received ARPA funding that now gives us an opportunity to address this. The village could not financially do anything about it prior to this. So this is an opportunity we'd like to take to remedy that situation.
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument about the need, and some of this is probably, wish we could do it on a handshake because everybody knows it needs to be done, but there are some technicalities that we need to go through, so. Corey, do you have anything you want to?
Sure, I can talk about the specific variance we're asking for. So the county ordinance, I won't go through the section in the paragraph, but it requires one-to-one compensatory storage. So all of the volume below the base flood elevation that we are filling, we're adding land to, the requirement is a one-to-one cut below that elevation. So if we're adding, and the memo talks about it, we're proposing 120 cubic yards of fill below that BFE, that base flood elevation. The ordinance requires 120 cubic yards of cut. And I won't get into all the details unless you want to hear about them, but the main gist of it is if we provide 120 cubic yards of cut, specifically on the west side of the road, it's going to be very flat and a very wide ditch, and that will not be able to drain well to the culvert going under the road.
Now, there's currently a 15-inch culvert under the road. Is that going to be replaced, or is there going to be additional culverts?
Yes. So
and what size culvert would it be replaced with?
We've proposed 3 parallel 18-inch culverts, not because the amount of water coming there is 3 to 5 times more than had been coming there, but because we want to make sure that the water on both sides of the road is equalized, and that there's not a flow going over the road because the water can't get through that culvert.
Okay. The runoff on that west side, if I understand that actually goes, it looks like it goes southwest. And I'm going by the map that's in your overflow path. There's an arrow here pointing up that way. Well, you can see the pond up in the right, just up and to the right of the curves there.
Yes.
Apparently, that's where the overflow would go.
Yeah. So it's a localized depression for a few feet. So it's going to, without positive drainage leading away from the site, it's going to fill up a few feet before it goes anywhere. But when it does go somewhere, that is to the northeast where that pond is.
Okay.
Now there is a drain tile that has recently been repaired on the east side of the road that drains this localized depression to the north, presumably towards that pond as well.
So the 120 cubic yards that would have to be cut, and you did, one of the reasons is you don't want to lose the farming part of it, and it's like a 120 cubic yards, like a 1-inch cut on an acre, spread out over a quarter of a mile is 40 feet. 40 feet of a 1-inch cut. That doesn't seem like that's a lot to me.
Right.
But if it's already too low on that side.
The main issue is because it needs to be provided below that base flood elevation, it pretty much has to be where it's already low there. And if we're lowering that further, it's just going to further make the drainage difficult. So for the smaller storms that are drained by that existing drain tile, right now the water can get there okay. If we were to provide further cut on the west side of there and lower it further, it's not going to be able to get to that culvert that goes under the road, and it's just going to be sitting there for a long time.
So you lose your balance of being able to keep, okay.
Yeah.
So Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of them as I read through this before, and that's a hydraulic soil. That's a peat underneath the road there. I read, and you said that you felt it was compacted enough that road wouldn't continue to sink after you replaced it. Are you cutting any of that peat out of there?
We are not planning on hauling out the 20 feet or so of peat that's under the road. We are expecting to just take out what is necessary to build up the road, so which is not a whole lot of it.
So were there borings done on that?
Yes.
To know there is 20 feet peat?
Yes. We had a geotechnical consultant do borings, and then subsurface investigation is what they call it. And they said it seems that it's compacted close to as much as it will. So it.
How much peat will actually compact?
Yeah, well, I can take a look and see specifically what they said. So they have significant deposits of organic silt and peat were encountered. High moisture contents, low strength, making them highly compressible. So they have compressed significantly. Their opinion is that they've probably compressed as much as they will.
Well, as much as they will. what would the cost be? Have you figured the cost associated to removing that peak to that 200 feet?
We did, and it is significant and would, based on the funds we have from ARPA, it's not.
Okay. All right. The field tile that goes through when it was repaired,
Yes.
that was one of my other questions about the field tiles. What size is that tile, and is it currently running? Does it have an outlet that it can actually go to the connection for and drain? And we haven't had rains to know that yet.
Yeah, I don't have all of the background on there. I don't know if you do, Emily. It is, I have the,
I mean, does it drain, is it
I believe it's,
it's not a main, or is it a main that goes through there?
I don't know where it exits, but I can tell you it's a 12-inch field tile, which is pretty significant for a field tile. I know it goes north. I think I would be surprised if it didn't drain to that pond, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know if you have record of that, Joanna.
There's not many places it can go.
I mean, has anybody walked up to that pond and actually just looked at it to see if it goes there? Because my concern here is you may do a nice, pretty new road, but with the peak ground, having farmed peak ground before, with the peak ground, it's soft and wavy, and you look at Route 47 down there crossing the peak ground. That road, continually, they'll never be able to fix that road until they make a major change to it. It will always continue to break away and sink, which is what it's doing again.
Is there weight limitations on that road right now?
I'm sorry?
Weight limitations on that road?
Yes.
Okay, so the farmer can't go down there with a semi-load of grain, is it?
They do though.
They do though, okay. But that wouldn't be what they should do, huh?
No, we actually particularly have a farmer that farms the fields behind the dog park, goes north to his other fields. He uses that fairly often. And I can ask him to take that big machine out on 47. He doesn't have to.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, gotcha on that. Joanna, with that condition, could you explain that a little bit? Is a proposed overall amount, is that the 120 or is that the 48 that they're proposed?
48. So Corey and his team, with the help of Emily and the Village of Bull Valley, had come up with their design with respect to the amount of cut and the amount of fill that they can do based on this design. So the fill was the 120 yards that Corey mentioned. Their design incorporates about 48 yards of cut based on the analysis and the engineering plans that they've provided. So what we recommend as staff is that they keep that 48 with respect to the cut, so that we ensure that the variance and the analysis and the engineering in the final condition matches what we've permitted in the proposed condition. And to get that right, they would provide an engineer or a surveyor to come out and do an as-built survey of the final product to ensure that that 48 is met. We don't want to do too much, we don't want to not enough.
Yeah, okay. Well, like I said, I drove out there yesterday, and this is really a tough area. You got swamp on both sides of the road. I'll call it swamp. I know the peatland is a concern, but we're not going to build a bridge over it. So
No, there's not the dollars.
Yeah.
And that's my reason I'm asking the
right,
questions.
and we've had plenty of areas in McHenry County where we fight that constantly with the road repairs. So I personally don't think that there's much choice at what else we can do here. Holding them to the true technical aspects of the ordinance seems to be a detriment in this particular situation because of the way the lay of the land is. So, anyone else have questions regarding this or concerns?
I'd make the motion to approve.
Well, can I just ask quickly?
Yeah, go ahead, Caroline, please.
Could I
First.
just hear a little bit more from Joanna about just your professional opinion? I mean, I do see us going forward with this, so don't get me wrong. I just wanted to hear more about what you were thinking in terms of the compaction and whether or not that, I mean, I guess over time, who's going to say that it won't sink a little bit more over time? Maybe we got to be realistic about that. But, does it hold up for another 25, 30, 50 years, and gets it through, but, so, just kind of looks.
Sure. With respect to that, we would lean on Baxter and Women. Obviously, they're the transportation engineers. We won't permit anything. We'll give a variance for anything. But with respect to the design, that's their engineer's opinion as to what is in their best interest with respect to funding and design with this project. It is a closed depression. We know that the water has to get pretty darn high for it to flow out and over and into that pond. And then what happens when that pond to the north floods? So it's all connected, and there's really not a good outlet unless you get to that tile. But then is the tile downstream maintained too? So it all comes into play with respect to that. The Village of Bull Valley does own those 2 parcels to the west. I recognize they probably have a lease with that farmland there. So they probably don't want to increase the amount of non-tillable land with respect to compensatory storage for the sheer fact of their agreement or, the loss of crop productivity in that area to begin with, or long term. So it's a balance of how much money do we have, how much space do we have, and what type of agreements do we have in place, and are we affecting those adjacent neighbors? And again, this is a closed depression, so the farm to the east of Queen Anne, although they've got a tile in there, it has the possibility of, because they are increasing the flood elevation, because they're providing fill, it does have the opportunity to potentially negatively affect the adjacent neighbor, as all projects do. So that's something that the engineer and us as permitting staff have to look at with respect to the ordinance and this variance process.
On that particular portion of the road right there, I looked at the elevations, but I can't, looking at that picture, I can't remember. It was like a half a foot off. It wasn't very far off. Which way does the water run underneath that road on that tile? Not when it's flooded. I'm saying, I know, and I understand going to the 3 culverts makes a lot of sense, the 3 routines. But which way would it normally go?
West to east.
West to east.
And that's where that tile is on the east side. When you have any significant flood, it doesn't really make a difference at that point in terms of which way it's going, because it's low on both sides.
And you located that tile by digging it? Someone digging it, that you know it's a 12-inch?
Yeah, we found yes. Yeah, our surveyors found it.
But it was dug and inspected that it had water in it or flowed or what? No? Clay tile, plastic tile?
It was replaced 2 years ago, maybe, or repaired, the portion that was damaged. Yeah, I don't have the material here.
The only tile replacement that I'm aware of is the Greenwood Drainage District tile further north.
Okay.
So I don't think we've done anything with that one.
And they had a pretty good mapping of their tile system.
I do know, I remember seeing work done there a few years back, but I couldn't tell you whether it was 2 years or 10
It
years.
was probably just cleaning it out.
But I know the gentleman to the east, I don't know personally, I mean, but when you're driving past, you saw work being done.
Jim is labeled on the survey corrugated plastic.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on it? I believe Mr. Guidemoller was going to make a motion to grant the ordinance variance to this, seconded by Carolyn. Any further discussion, or we'll go to vote? Jim?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So that will be the variance as being granted. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we need to adjourn the public meeting. Motion to adjourn the public meeting by Lou, seconded by Carl. Any discussion regarding adjourning the meeting? The public meeting was adjourned at 9:41. We good?
Do we have to vote outside the meeting or before the meeting? In the meeting?
No, it's just a public hearing, so it
We're
doesn't.
okay where we voted? Okay.
Okay, good.
Just because the way we do.
Go ahead, object.
I'm not objecting, I just want to know if we did it right.
Yeah, we probably should have.
We should vote again? All right, I think we should vote again.
Okay. I'm not the policy guy.
Just do it, you can just do it as a voice vote.
All those, well, we have the motion by Mr. Gardner and seconded by
No,
Carol.
not that motion. The motion to adjourn.
Oh,
We close the meeting, that's what it's talking about.
I thought we already
We
did that.
didn't call for a vote for it.
Oh, we didn't call for a vote.
Second,
Oh, okay,
we didn't
I see.
call for a vote.
Oh, gotcha.
We have the motion and the second to adjourn the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, back to our PED meeting.
And then I'm okay to vote again if we think it's a problem.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Presentations, I don't believe we have any. Nothing on the routine consent agenda. Old business, we're back to the ordinance granting landmark designation to the Kattner farm property.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Yes, I thought there was
So,
some.
Adam, all right.
So,
Bring us, just bring us up to speed where we're at with this right now, if you would, please.
definitely. And some level of conclusion with it as well, at least for the time being.
Hi, everyone. So at the last Historic Preservation Commission meeting, Mr. P's representative, Mr. Brown, came and presented the idea to the commission of letting the octagonal barn be disassembled and moved to Richardson's farm. And then there is an organization called the W.A. McConnell Foundation. It's a newish historic preservation organization in Richmond. And Mr. Pease is working with them with the intention of donating the 10 acres with the farmstead on it and all the buildings to the W.A. McConnell Foundation. So since the octagonal barn is being taken out of the mix, and we held the public hearing published with the barn in the mix, and everyone that came spoke primarily about the barn, I believe that we can't really amend the petition or the request that's before you to landmark those other properties without going back and having a new public hearing. So that's the determination that I made last week. So the applicant will be withdrawing the request that's before you, and you'll see a new nomination for the other buildings later.
So that all sounds fine, so we don't have to take any action on this today.
Correct.
You're just bringing us up to date. Peter, Scott had mentioned that we were going to get a letter. Did that ever come through about the, I'm trying to think what group wanted the octagon barn to be moved to the Richardson farm? You're not familiar with that? Okay.
I'm not familiar with the letter.
Okay.
There is a letter from Mr. Pease that outlines what I just.
I think it was the Conservation District or someone, and I don't know, Scott was putting that together. He wasn't sure he was going to have it for this meeting or not. I was hoping it was going to be here, but with the information you're providing us, we don't have to take any action anyway. And it's going to come back to us as a new petition for the other two barns and the property, and Mr. Pease is working with that, which it all sounds good to me. Go ahead, Jim.
So, I'm real confused, which that's not unusual, but the octagon barn is out of the equation, that they're actually going to take it down and move it to Richardson's.
Correct.
Okay, because one of the letters I wrote that he'd given those options, Mr. Pease had. So now he's still looking to donate the land to them for the rest of the existing barns. And that is what will be coming forward. Nothing about that barn will ever come forward to us?
Nothing about the barn will ever come forward to you because Richardson's is incorporated. So the barn is moving to property that's outside our jurisdiction.
So, we didn't get that letter. So apparently that letter is not in our packet about the most recent,
The letter from Mr. Pease.
Yes.
There's an old letter that I was referring to.
Yeah, no, and I think you were referring to the old letters. I think we have the old letters in our packet, not the
Yes.
newest one, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think Yeah, we'll get that out. I think that the letter we're talking about here was from last week. if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, or last
Which is
week.
probably why
Yeah.
it's not in, so I just, yeah. Okay.
It'll be included certainly in the new petitions coming forward.
Okay.
Okay, well, we did a good job on that then.
You did a great job.
No, actually, I'm very happy with the outcome, so that's gonna work out.
May I ask, is that okay with you, Mr. Hughes? What you just heard here today, is that your understanding?
Yes, I would like to add something to it, though. We're all in for this 10 acres being used for some public benefit, and obviously the most or the best public benefit. We've also talked to the Conservation District, who would gladly take the land, but they don't want the buildings. So I'm in a little bit of a conflict of, well, I'm donating it, it's a few $100,000, so I'd like to see it be the best for the public. So I'm waiting to see a plan on how they would restore these other buildings and be a little bit convinced myself that it's a positive thing for the public, better than what the Conservation District would do, which would be to have a public access point and maybe even a parking lot in a building to get access to the rest of the adjacent property they have. And I'd like to be able to continue to work with them, let them try to convince me that that's better for the public. Otherwise, I'm going to go back, I'm not going to renege on the offer, I'll just go back to the Conservation District and let them have it for the other purpose. And they're not even sure yet, because they're looking at the quality of those two buildings, how dilapidated condition they are, and I want an architectural plan to show me how they're going to fix it, what they're going to look like, because so far that's never been evaluated yet. And I've met two different, not just carpenters, but Van Krumpen and another gentleman that does post and beam construction and does dismantle and reassemble barns. And there is no post and beam construction in those. They're traditional framing with modern materials that haven't had a good roof on for 50 years and are very, very dilapidated. And if you were there on a rainy day, you can't go inside those two buildings to get out of the rain. The rain comes right through the building. So I think everyone needs to have an open mind that we're picking the right one of those two. And I'm going to stay very involved to see if we can come up with a plan that has some real value for the public for those buildings. Otherwise, it's going to be a beautiful addition to the Conservation District.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, sounds like that's just moving forward in a great way, actually. Glad everybody's working together on that. That's nice.
Don't go far.
I know.
I know, right?
So, move on to reports and the ZBA hearing officer reports. So we got 4 of them.
We have 4 and nothing terribly controversial. One is a solar farm, and it was applied for before the state law. So the new state law requirements don't really apply to this one, but it does have a 7-0 recommendation to approve. And then the next one is there's an A1 to E3. The family that owns the property is applying for the zoning, and their intention is to subdivide into 4 lots. It's 40 acres, so large lot. That's why they're asking for E3. Our future land use plan does designate the property as a state, so it had a unanimous recommendation to move forward as well. And then the last 2 are pretty simple variations in the legacy neighborhood where people are on very small lots. One is to add on to a garage. The other one is to build a fence. They're a corner lot, so technically they're building a 6-foot fence in one of the street yards. And the hearing officer recommended approval of both of those.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, did you?
I do have a question, so don't go. I know, my turn. And it's not specific to this, and maybe this isn't the right format for it. We have a lot of these come forward where we're taking ag land, ag 1 goes to ag 2, now we put a house on it. Now we're taking an ag 1, we're going to a kind of a state. And so I guess, and because I'm not that familiar with the zoning, I feel like we have these areas that we're plopping all over the place that are within the agricultural areas that are now becoming subdivisions of sorts, right?
Yeah, I haven't looked at this specifically, but I assume that this is not farmland.
I think it is, but it
portion of
is, but the comprehensive plan shows the growth in this area is towards the estate residential and recommends that as the future land use.
Okay. Carolyn, I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you?
No, I wanted to start that conversation
Okay.
because I'm not sure where this goes.
Okay, Jim?
That is the Harmony Road one. Okay. That's actually my neighbor. So it's,
Okay.
and I would normally object to E3, but I'm not going to object to this one because A1 puts a solar farm on me and I'm not doing that. So.
I'm sorry, A1 puts a solar farm on it?
A1, you can put a solar farm on 30 acres or 40 acres. It doesn't matter where it's at.
True, but
And
30 years
that's
will
my
still be a
problem
farm.
with this whole thing on our hearings, that we're having these hearings. That's the subject here, but we're having these hearings, and I'd like an answer of why we're continuing to allow these hearings to move forward until we get answers. And I think we're really sticking ourselves in the ear with this.
I spoke with the state's attorney's office on Friday and again this morning. And they are researching that, but they are very aware of your read on that legislation. Eric Hendricks brought it to our attention last week. So more to come. I mean, Norm knows this is an issue, and this is it's not going away.
Right. We can't go backwards on the ones we passed. We could, but I don't know if it would be a smart thing to do. Go backwards on the ones we passed, because we passed a bunch of them when we shouldn't have even considered it yet.
But state's attorney, by the cow, possibly, or something. Yeah, okay, that'd be great.
It will be, yeah.
Okay.
So, but I know that, so just to kind of continue with that, because I understand what you're saying, but if you take something that's A1 and now it's E3, that land is no longer farmable. I mean, I go get the whole
It's
thing
still
about.
farmable.
No, it's still
I mean,
farmable.
You can still farm it. but
Well, on
it's-
10 acres, that's true.
I mean,
That
what
is
about on
true.
8
Some of our-
acres?
Huh?
Even on 8 acres?
Well, 5 acres. I
I
mean, you
mean,
could
I've
farm
got,
farming all
I've
over the
got
place.
10 acres there.
I get you. Okay,
and I'm
that's true.
farming it.
That's true. It's not like taking it to a high density.
The change happens when you put your road in and you actually make lots.
Right, that's true.
And,
You're like your
and,
R1.
and even then, from the developer standpoint, the developer would keep paying it or do something until those lots were sold. Because they can't, nobody can hold, nobody would intentionally hold land and be taxed at a per lot basis when you don't have to be. But that's taxes, and that's not the same thing as zoning.
No, I get that, and that's also where it makes it very complicated to know what land is actually in farmland or which land is being held in farmland for development. So as we look at the whole comprehensive plan, I think it gets confusing.
And that one is in the 2030 plan as a state.
If that isn't,
And it also, they're not gonna be putting a road through the center, but that's why they're splitting it. This gentleman wants it to stay agriculture, but at the same time, he doesn't even live there anymore. He hasn't lived there for 2 or 3 years. And what they want to do is have it so that people can buy it, build a single house, have their horses or whatever on there, farm it. But it does have a lot of road frontage on Harmony Road that they could split it without putting road.
Okay, we can move on to
Thank you.
the 9.2, budget presentation expectations.
I just, a month ago, the Finance Committee asked that the departments reporting their budgets through the Finance Committee keep their budgets a little leaner.
The presentation.
The presentation, yeah, budgets as well.
Budget a little leaner too, yeah.
So we've been asking committees this round if that was kind of what they would like to see as well. I did have this conversation with Transportation Committee, Along Government, and Public Health all last week, and they all said, yeah, let's keep the budget presentations crisp in terms of what is changing and what's different from 23 to 24, and focus there. Not so much talking about what you do, but talking about the numbers. So Adam and his team have always done a very good budget presentation, and I'm sure they'll make it as big as you want. But we did have a good presentation to all the new committees in the first quarter of this year.
Yeah, so, I don't, there's nothing we need to do about that other than to pass that along to Adam, that's what the we hope to keep the presentations. You've always done a fine job, I thought, of keeping them pretty lean and tight anyway, so.
And this is a one department committee anyway, so it's not as big a deal.
Yeah, so.
We'll keep it trimmed. And we're one of the few departments that does the annual report as well, so we can kind of take off some of the stuff you've already heard in that annual report, just keep it budget central.
Okay, thanks. That's all we need to do on that?
That's all.
Okay, future topics?
Oh, we're gonna do zoning, right? We're gonna do our zoning training.
Zoning training would be a future topic, and we have to.
If we're gonna do it here at the county board level or both, or kind of do a run through here and see what the questions are and then what needs to be
I
developed.
think if we're going to ask Mr. Gadamoller to participate, we would need to his input on what he would like to help
I'll
with.
do it whichever way you. I did it before I was ever on this board, and I would be more than happy to sit down with somebody in the state's attorney's office. I do think it should be the combination, but I do now have the perspective that the state's attorney doesn't have, which is to sit on this side of the table and make the decisions. But I'd be happy to sit down and talk about what those rules are and how you try to follow them.
How long do you think a presentation like that would be?
In the past, it took probably a half hour.
Would you be willing to spend a half an hour at a cow so it'd be a little
I'll do it wherever people want it done.
Okay. Would be, Peter, would you like to talk to the chairman about that to see if that's something that he'd be interested in allowing us to do at the committee of the whole meeting? Or do you have a recommendation?
No, my pause there is just, I know that the August cow, we've got 2 presentations already.
Well, we could wait till September.
Yeah.
What's the 2050 plan presentation? When will that be?
Oh, that's going to be a while.
That's a long time.
Yeah, you're.
Yeah, it's very, I find
Maybe then.
I find it difficult to vote on stuff that I don't really understand the complexities. I said that before. Well, yes.
I don't think that's an issue that it would be in September and see how the schedules. Joe has to work it out with the state's attorney's office, coordinate some time. I would assume put a little game plan together on how they want to present it. Would that work for you, Joe, September?
I'll cooperate any way I can.
Okay.
I'm not, if they want to throw me out, that's okay too.
But we'll get permission from the chairman, then we'll get Mr. Gadamoller to talk to Peter and organize and sit down with the state's attorney that would be presenting with him. Is that how you're thinking it's going to work?
That's how we did it in the past.
Yeah, and that was good. So we can coordinate that for September, unless September all of a sudden looks like it's going to be packed with other stuff.
Well, my fear and the reason to do it in the end is still board members. There's some real restrictions on what we get to do or how we make our decision. And I just would like to have everybody to have the tools.
Yeah.
I said this years ago and I mean it today. I am not telling you how you vote. I'm telling you, here's how you make the decision. It's your decision. I don't ever want to be in a spot where I'm saying, well, you have to vote this way. No, it's here's the issues you look at when you're doing making a zoning decision. And if you're going to speak and vote, you should tie your decision to these standards that the courts have said repeatedly. This is what you have to follow. And that's really all we're looking at, is to kind of give you the tools and saying, this is what you're supposed to decide. Mm-hmm. I know you've all heard me tell you about Mary Lou Ziller talking about how I know this farmer and he's a great guy and we should give him whatever he wants. But that's not a standard.
Carolyn, do you want to?
Yeah, I think that, and I think Jim, you raised your hand too, so I just don't want to step on your toes, but if we look forward and we don't have time in September, one of the things is, and I don't want to duplicate efforts, but as the committee, that is, we don't necessarily vote on these things in this committee, but we do vote as a group at the COW. You know, if we get to the point where this gets pushed back, I wouldn't mind maybe a 10-minute, 15-minute conversation right here so that we're better informed.
I don't think that, the problem is, once you get into this and you start having questions and back and forth, it's not gonna be 10 or 15 minutes. It's probably gonna be a half-hour presentation
Well,
and
sure,
turn into
that's
45
true.
minutes of the back and forth. So, and now we'd be asking the state's attorney and Mr. Godeweller to do it twice.
Whatever you want.
And I think being on this side, having residents call, being so upset, it's important that I know what I actually can do and can't do as a county board member. And when my hands are tied by the ordinance or the zoning or the law, even if it feels like a failure to say, I can't do it, this is what we do, I have to know what that is so I can articulate it clearly to people. And it allows me to find a place to stand when I vote. But if I don't know that, then I feel like I don't know what I'm talking. And I'm happy to talk about what I don't know what I'm talking about, believe me.
So, what are you talking about?
I look forward to, give a presentation,
So
only
wherever it
get
is.
to throttle the fire hose back.
And for whatever it's worth, if you do have that question someday and you can't reach Adam or the state's attorney's office, I'd be more than happy to talk to you on those issues if they come up. I mean, but I don't want to be in a situation where we talk with 3 board members of this committee at the same time. I don't want an open meetings violation. But again, I'm more than happy to be a resource to other board members if you need.
Jim, did you want something to add?
Yeah, you know what, it's one of those meetings that this is our last meeting that we get to enjoy Joanna.
I know.
That
Yes.
her last day is Friday, as I saw in an email, that she's moving on, and I would just like to publicly thank her and the work that she's done for the county.
Just wait till she comes back and has a petition.
Well, she's gonna come on the other side. She's gonna come on the other side. She'll be asking us all these favors, but no, I just would like to say thank you to Joanna for her time that she's
Absolutely.
given as a
Absolutely.
staff.
Yep, you bet. Thank you for bringing that up, Jim. Thank you.
I was glad that we had something that you could present on, because it's been a while since you've been before the board.
I think what I'm hearing from the committee is that if we could put a little something together for the next PED meeting, and Adam, we'll talk about how much is on the agenda. Joe will talk to see if you want to put something together.
Say again? Yeah, I think we'll be prepared to do budget next month as well. So if we want to pair it, I'll go lean and mean on the budget. Yeah, we can coordinate.
Okay, the 3 of us can talk, and then we'll talk with Peter and Chairman Bueller about bringing it to the committee of the whole at some point too. Does that sound good?
Whatever people want.
Well, they do vote, they do final votes on these things, that the board members should have a basic understanding.
Let's see if we can coordinate that, and then we'll get something set up for the next PD meeting, if our agenda's not crazy.
Yeah, sure.
Sound good? Anyone else? A motion to adjourn, please. Motion to adjourn by Carl, seconded by Mr. Godemeyer. All those in favor say aye.